Welcome back to the Casual Animorphs Book Club. I took a bit of a hiatus over the summertime, and, you know, I figured hopefully others were out and about and enjoying the summer weather, but now that it's another bleak November and we haven't actually seen the sun in 7 or 8 days, I don't think. I figured we're probably not the only ones who are feeling a bit stuck in the apartment with some of the shortest days and longest nights. So, hoping I can provide a little bit of diversion. Tonight, Matthew and I went to the Woodstock Public Library. They've had a NaNoWriMo writing group gathering on a weekly basis, and they gave us these buttons. Just noted that we always say we'll do all those things we mean to do with our lives when we get around to it. So they gave us round to it. Yeah, public library just giving round to it's away. I thought that was delightful. We are reconvening with Animorphs number 4, The Message. I don't know if anybody needs much of a recap. I think I'm not going to do much to reintroduce the premise or the characters because I know each and every one of these books, especially the early ones in the series, they are going to reintroduce you to the characters and the Yeerks and such. So, yeah, not knowing if anybody else is going to be available to join us, I think maybe Matt can drop a link in the Discord or on Twitter or wherever, just in case anybody else is interested, but I will start reading. Animorphs number 4, The Message by K.A. Applegate. Chapter 1. My name is Cassie. I can't tell you my last name. I wish I could. But I can't even tell you what town I live in, or in what state. We have to disguise our identities, we Animorphs. It's not about being shy. It's about staying alive. If the Yeerks ever learn who we are, we'll be done for. If they don't kill us outright, they'll make us controllers. They'll force a Yeerk slug into our brains, where it will take control of us, making us slaves, tools of the Yeerk invasion of Earth. And I really don't like the idea of being under the control of an alien. I don't like the idea of being dead either. On the other hand, there are some things I do like about being an Animorph. Some very cool things. Take the other night. It was late. I should have been in bed. Instead, I was in the barn, getting ready to turn into a squirrel. Technically, the barn is really the wildlife rehabilitation clinic. My dad is a vet. So is my mom, but she works at the gardens, this big zoo. The wildlife rehabilitation clinic is just my dad and me. We take in injured birds and animals and try to save them, then release them back into their natural habitats. That's where I was, in the barn, surrounded by dozens of cages full of birds, from a mourning dove who'd run into a car windshield to a golden eagle who'd almost been electrocuted by a power line. In another part of the barn, we have bigger cages for the badgers and opossums and skunks and deer and even a pair of wolves who'd been poisoned. At the other end, far from the wolves, we keep our own horses. There's an operating room and a couple of small recovery rooms, too. Back to that night. Have you ever watched a squirrel in the park? They are constantly alert, constantly looking around. It's like every minute of every day they're thinking, hey, what's that? So I knew that if I morphed into a squirrel, all that nervousness and fear would become part of me. It's something we've all had to deal with, controlling the animal instincts, the animal mind that comes along with the animal body. Anyway, that's where I was, in a gloomy barn with just the yellow overhead bulbs to light the room. Why was I there? Because someone, or something, had been sneaking in and getting at the birds. We'd lost a patient just the night before, a duck. And because I couldn't sleep anyway, I kept having these dreams. Only they weren't like normal dreams somehow. More like, I don't know, just really strange, that's all. Relax, Magilla, I whispered to the squirrel in my hands. This won't hurt at all. I pulled some chestnuts from my pocket and handed him one. Another nut fell to the floor. Some morphs are easy. Some are terrifying. When I was a horse, that was cool. When I had to become a trout, well, that was a little more weird. The whole time, I just kept thinking how someone could fry me and serve me with tartar sauce. And I don't like tartar sauce. Squirrel, I told myself. I always try to get into the feeling of what it might be like to be the animal before I even start morphing, which in this case is by saying the word squirrel. So, I mean, I imagine that's how Matt Berry's character takes bat form in What We Do Among the Shadows. Yes. Squirrel, I told myself. The first physical change was in my size. I started shrinking. It's a very bizarre feeling. See, you feel like you're standing totally still, but the ground keeps coming up towards you, and the ceiling is moving away. Door handles aren't where they should be anymore. All of a sudden, they're over your head. I had shrunk to maybe 2.5 feet tall when my arms came sucking back into my body. Right about that point, the real Magilla tore out of there. He ran back to his cage, got in, and, I swear to God this is true, closed the door behind him. Anyway, I still had normal, although short, legs, but my arms were stunted. I still had the normal number of fingers, but they were teeny tiny now, way too small for my body. My ears traveled up the side of my head to rest on top. Soft gray fur spread across my body in a wave. My face puffed out and grew pointed. Then, the wildest thing, my tail sprouted out of my body. And what was cool was that I wasn't a squirrel yet. I was still about half human, the size of a small child, and my tail just shot out about 2 feet long, much longer and bigger than it would be once I was totally squirrelified. I tilted my head back and I could see this bushy gray tail arched up over me. Way cool. My legs sucked in and I was down on the ground, down on the cement floor of the barn. I suddenly discovered I hadn't swept and mopped as well as I thought I had. Amazing what you can see when your face is just an inch away from the floor. Then the squirrel brain kicked in. Whoa, yeah, man, did I have energy! It was like I was plugged into 1,000,000 volts. I was supercharged. My slow, sluggish human brain was just blown away by this sudden explosion of energy. A noise, what's that? I cocked my ears. I swung my head, focusing my big eyes. A bird in a cage. A new sound. What was it? I spun around. No, wait, what was that? And that? And the other sound? Predators! They were everywhere. I was surrounded. Predators, birds, big birds with nasty claws all around me. Wait, there was a nut. Ooh, a nut. Predators, alert. I scampered across the floor. Look left, look right. Sniff, 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 sniff the air. Oh, yes, predators. I smelled them. I heard them. Birds, a wolf, a badger, predators. Run, 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 run. Oh, wait, was that a nut? I hopped over to the nut. Yes, a chestnut. I seized it in my little front claws and began immediately to chew a hole in it. Excellent, wonderful chestnut. And I had it. No one could take it away. A noise, what? Predators! Drop the nut, run with the nut, run. With the nut stuffed into my jaw, I ran. I ran straight up the wall, straight up. And that was the moment when Tobias decided to show up. Chapter 2. Tobias flew in through the hayloft overhead. Unfortunately, in my squirrel mentality, with my human brain just barely holding on, I didn't realize it was Tobias. What it looked like to me was a red-tailed hawk, a bird of prey, and this one was not in one of the cages. No, this one was flapping around the high rafters of the barn. The hawk had talons like steel and a hooked beak that could open me up like a can of beans. I felt his hawk's eyes on me. Run, 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 run. I didn't know what to do. I mean, me, the human being named Cassie, I didn't know what to do. I knew I had to get control over the squirrel, but it was so hyper. However, the squirrel knew just what to do. Zoom! I ran straight up a wall. Mm. My, li- my little claws grabbed at tiny splinters and cracks in the wood and shot up at a terrifying speed. If you've never been a squirrel, and let's face it, you probably haven't been a squirrel, you don't have any idea what it's like to run up. Mm. The wooden walls were just like a floor under me, but at the same time, I knew the difference between up and down. I knew if I fell, it would be down. It's as if you're running across the floor in your house. It's as if you were running across the floor in your house, but if you tripped, you'd fall back against the wall. Very strange. Mm. Tobias had come to rest on a rafter, but I could feel his eyes on me. I froze. I froze completely. Not even my tail twitched. I just clutched onto the wall and froze. But I couldn't keep it up. That torrent of squirrel energy would not let me stand still for long. Suddenly, with barely a glance to the side, I launched myself through space. I flew. I just jumped and hurtled through the air for what seemed like half a mile, but was actually just 10 feet. Slam! I landed on the wooden beam. I landed on the wooden beam that runs above the horse stalls. Bad move. Tobias had seen my movement. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw his vast wings open. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw his vast wings open. He swooped down, talons raked forward. But then, a new movement. Something large and furtive. A board in the side of the barn pushed open. A head poked inside. It was just below me. An intelligent, alert face, looking up at me and wondering if I was dinner. A fox! Aha! My mystery bird killer! I had to get control of the squirrel brain. It always takes a minute in any new morph. It always takes a minute in any new morph, at least, to control those wild animal instincts. But I didn't have a minute. Tobias swooped. Suddenly, it was insanity everywhere. Birds in every cage began to squawk and shriek. The wolves in the next room decided to start howling. The horses were whinnying shrilly. Tobias sheared away, startled. Too late. I had jumped again, and now I was falling toward the straw-covered floor. Tobias sheared away, startled. Too late. I had jumped again, and now I was falling toward the straw-covered floor of a stall, falling toward the fox. I hit the ground and blew out of there, leaving a storm of dust and straw in my wake. The fox came after me. He was fast, very fast. Tobias, help! I yelled in thought speak. What the? Is that you, Cassie? I dodged left. The fox dodged after me. He was faster than me and almost as agile. Unless I could find a place to climb up and away, I was done for. Yes, it's me. Well, why didn't you tell me? He said, sounding grumpy in my head. I was considering eating you. I just morphed. I just got control of this crazy squirrel brain. Now would you please save me? The fox's jaws snapped at my tail. I felt his teeth comb the fur. Good grief, Tobias said. He opened his wings and came hurtling down, straight at the fox. The fox saw the shadow of the big hawk. He stopped, dead in his tracks. Too late. Tobias raked him with his talons and shot past. The fox decided that this was more trouble than he needed. He bolted for a secret passageway. Tobias came to rest on a crossbeam and looked down at me with his fierce hawk's gaze. Cassie? Why are you out here at midnight turning into a squirrel? I was already starting to morph back to human shape. Well, we've had some birds taken in the last couple of days. We figured it was a badger or a raccoon or a fox, but we couldn't figure out how he was getting in. So I decided to morph and wait to see when he showed up. Well, I certainly can't criticize anyone who wants to rescue birds, he said. He fluffed his wings and began preening some ruffled feathers. I was halfway back to human shape, growing up from the floor, feeling my legs sprout beneath me. But my human mouth was not back yet. So, what are you doing here, Tobias? Looking for a squirrel sandwich? Tobias had almost completely accepted the fact that he was permanently stuck in the body of a red-tailed hawk. Recently, he had begun to hunt and eat like a hawk. He was still a little sensitive about it, but I thought if I just made a little joke out of it, he would realize I wasn't grossed out or anything. Squirrel sandwich, he said. No, I was thinking barbecue. Sorry I scared you. It's okay, my friend, I said in my own voice. My mouth had formed. I was almost back to normal, all but this huge tail, which was still poking out the back of my morphing outfit. Normal, for me, is about average height, I guess, whatever average is. I'm kind of solidly built, not skinny and not fat. With hair I keep short because I don't like messing with it. As my friends would tell you, I'm not exactly Miss Fashion. Mostly, if you want to know what I look like, picture a girl in overalls and leather work gloves, biting her lip as she concentrates on trying to force a pill down the throat of a badger. Jake once took a picture of me doing exactly that. Jake once took a picture of me doing exactly that, and he has it next to his computer in his room. Don't ask me why. I would be glad to give him a picture of me in a dress or something. Rachel could loan me the dress, but Jake says he likes the picture he has. I hear something, Tobias said, suddenly alert. I strained my ears. Human ears are so lame. Almost any animal can hear better. But then I heard it, too. A voice. Is someone in there? My father. You still have a tail. Too late. The barn door swung open. My father stood there, blinking sleepily and holding a flashlight. Cass, what are you doing out here? I stuck my hands behind my back and tried to hold my big squirrel tail down while I attempted to morph it away at maximum speed. Nothing, Dad. I just couldn't sleep. He nodded. Okay, well, go to bed now, he said crankily. My father is one of those people who needs about an hour and 3 cups of coffee to wake up. Okay, Daddy, I said. He hesitated. Cassie, turn around. Turn around? I repeated in a squeaky voice. Yeah, turn around. Just turn around. Slowly, I turned. As I did, the last of the tail swooped back into my spine. Huh, my dad said. I gotta get back to sleep. I swear, I thought you had a tail. I laughed weakly. When he left, I collapsed back on the straw. I really should have just stayed in bed, I said to Tobias. Dreams or no dreams. Dreams? He snapped. What kind of dreams? I shrugged. I don't know, these kind of weird dreams about the sea? The sea, he echoed. And a voice calling out to you from beneath the water? It was warm in the barn, but suddenly I felt really cold. Chapter 3. No, I haven't had any weird dreams about the sea, Marco said. I've had weird dreams about my sheets trying to strangle me. I've had weird dreams about falling from way up high, and when I finally land, I'm in Mr. Rogers' neighborhood talking to King Friday. I've had weird dreams about that woman on Baywatch. Well, okay, that one does kind of involve the ocean, I guess. You have dreams about King Friday? Rachel asked him. She put on a worried look. I see. She shook her head slowly and made a sound. What? What's the matter with dreaming about King Friday? Marco demanded. Rachel shrugged. All I'm going to say is you should think about seeing a counselor before your condition worsens. Rachel turned so Marco couldn't see her and gave me a wink. Very funny, Marco sneered. But he still looked a little worried. We were in Rachel's room the next day after school. Her room is so neat. Straight out of a magazine, you know? Like everything matches or goes together. She has this bulletin board where she puts little wise sayings on post-it notes. I drifted over to the bulletin board and read, "Don't think there are no crocodiles just because the water is calm. Malayan proverb." Just beside that one was, "If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the results of 100 battles." Sun Tzu. It made me a little sad. In the good old days, Rachel would have had a bunch of quotations about being a good person or whatever. It just showed how much our lives had changed. In a very short time, we had all grown accustomed to a world of fear and danger. We had arrived at Rachel's house separately. We had each checked to make sure we weren't being followed. We had planned the afternoon in advance to be sure that Rachel's mom and her two sisters would be out. We had even had Tobias fly over the area looking for anything unusual. This is what our lives had become. That and quotations full of paranoia and battle. Jake hadn't said anything yet. Tobias and I had both told everyone about our strangely identical dreams and the voice that seemed to come from beneath the sea, the strange voice that called to us. No one else had heard the voice in their dreams. Marco had made jokes. Rachel had been supportive but skeptical. Only Jake had remained silent. I suppose you could say Jake is sort of our leader, although he's not bossy in any way. It's more like this natural aspect of his personality. He's the one you just automatically look to when there's trouble. Of course, I look at him for other reasons. Not that I would ever tell him or anything, but I really like Jake. As in like. He's very cute in a big, strong kind of way. He has brown hair and dark, dark eyes. He seems very serious until you get to know him. And then you realize he's still pretty serious. But he also knows when to laugh. Jake has to know when to laugh because Marco has been his best friend since they were both in diapers or something. They've competed and fought and disagreed the whole time. Marco's mission in life is to find the humor in everything, even in his best friend. Marco is kind of cute too, although he's not my type. He wears his brown hair long and has these amazing eyelashes that I would love to have myself. Marco, sorry, our critters are being very talkative to each other. Marco isn't interested in being in charge or even being part of a team. He wants us to just quit the whole thing. He wants us to forget the Yerks and forget morphing and just try to stay alive. But at the same time, it's Marco who's very aware of all the security problems. He's the He's the one who makes sure we never discuss anything on the telephone, where enemy ears might be listening. Rachel's my closest friend. She has been for years. How can I explain Rachel? First of all, she and Jake are first cousins, and they have a lot in common. They seem to grow strong people in that family, because Rachel is the strongest person I know. It's like nothing ever intimidates her. She's totally fearless, or at least that's how she seems. To look at her, you'd think, oh, she'll grow up to be some airhead model because she's very tall and very pretty and very blonde. But I pity anybody who mistakes Rachel for a wimpy airhead. Sometimes I think Rachel likes the way everything has worked out. It's like all along there was this Amazon warrior locked up inside of her, and now she has an excuse to bring it out. But she was not a person who believed in dreams very much. Well, okay, she said. If we're done with the dreams, then let's. Rachel? Jake interrupted. I think I have something that may be interesting. He pulled a video cassette out of his bag. Cool, let's watch a movie, Marco said. Not a movie, Jake said. I guess no one else watched the late news last night? I was too busy watching my tape reruns of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, Marco said, giving Rachel a sly look. Last night it was the one where it was a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Jake rolled his eyes up to the ceiling, the way he'd done a million times before when Marco said something irrelevant and annoying. Rachel, can we go downstairs and use your VCR? Sure, Rachel said. We trooped down the stairs, except for Tobias, who fluttered down above our heads. Hey, Tobias, Marco said. I've been meaning to ask you, are hawks like seagulls? I mean, do they poop while they're flying? Depends on who's down below, Tobias shot back. Let me put it this way. If you get on my nerves, you'd better buy a hat. Down in Rachel's living room, Jake turned on the TV and popped in his cassette tape. There was just this one small story, he narrated, as, on the screen, an old guy in a bathing suit held up a piece of what looked like metal. So now we're interested in hairy old guys who should be wearing shirts, Marco asked. This old guy says he found that on the beach. It washed up during the storm a couple of days ago. Watch. The camera focused in on what looked like a jagged piece of metal, about 2 feet long and 1 feet wide. As the camera zoomed in, I saw what looked like letters, only they weren't any alphabet I had ever seen. Now, the tape was showing the anchor woman smiling, and then it went blank. Jake turned the VCR off. Okay, so... Marco prodded. Jake sighed. So the night the Andalite landed, when I went inside his ship to get the cube that gave us our morphine powers, I saw writing. I felt a chill creep up the back of my neck. I could be wrong. I mean, I'm not some expert, Jake said, but I think it was that same alphabet, those same kinds of letters. Suddenly, no one was laughing, not even Marco. I think what washed up on the beach is a piece of an Andalite ship, Jake said. Suddenly, without warning, I felt the ground swirl beneath me. I fell straight back, Suddenly, without warning, I felt the ground swirl beneath me. I fell straight back, not even caring that Jake caught me in his arms just before I hit the carpet. Chapter 4. I was falling into the sea. Splash! I hit the water, but still I fell, down and down and down through blue-green sunlit layers of water. I'm here, a voice called to me. I am here. I cannot survive much longer. If you hear me, come. If you hear me, come. Suddenly, I opened my eyes. I stared up at Jake's concerned face. Glancing across the room, I saw Rachel with the telephone to her ear, preparing to dial. She's awake, Jake said. I'd better still call an ambulance, Rachel said. No, Marco snapped. Not unless we know she's hurt. It's too big a risk. Rachel's eyes flared the way they do when someone tells her something she doesn't want to hear. I'm calling 911, she said tersely. No, Rachel, I'm okay, I said. I sat up. My head felt a little woozy, but I was all right. Rachel hesitated, her fingers just above the keypad. What about Tobias? I looked around the room. And saw Tobias spread out on the floor, one wing crumpled beneath him. He looked dead. I jumped up and ran to him. Rachel, Cassie seems okay, and 911 can't help Tobias, Jake said. Rachel replaced the receiver and ran over to Tobias. He's not dead, I said. I could feel him breathing. Then, just as suddenly as I had, he woke up. His enormous brown hawk eyes opened, instantly fierce. His first reaction was pure hawk. He hopped up and flared. Hawks flare just the way cats do when they're trying to intimidate someone. They hunch their shoulders and fluff up their feathers to make themselves look bigger than they are. Everybody stand still, I said quickly. It's okay, Tobias. You were just out for a minute there. He quickly gained control over the hawk instincts. That was strange, he said. It happened to me too, I said. I passed out, and then I had the dream again, only this time I could hear an actual voice, or at least I heard thought speech. Me too, Tobias confirmed. Okay, now this is getting weird, Rachel said. Because at the same time, I thought I kind of felt something. Yeah, Jake agreed. Marco nodded. I know this sounds crazy, but it's like someone is sending out a distress signal, like they're calling for help. Only this someone is in the water, or under the water, or something, I said. Seeing that video, seeing that writing, it was like suddenly the message grew stronger. Or it may have just been a coincidence, Jake said. This isn't a dream. I don't know what it is, but it isn't a dream. Even I halfway saw something. This is some kind of communication. Well, this is all very interesting, Marco said. But so what? I mean, are we getting some kind of psychic message from the Little Mermaid? What are we supposed to do about it? Jake looked closely at me. Cassie, was the voice in your dream a human voice? I was startled by the question. I hadn't really thought about it. I actually laughed. When you asked me, the first thing that popped in my head was, no, it isn't human. I laughed again, but that doesn't make any sense. It's not human, Tobias said suddenly. I understand the meaning of what it's saying, but it's not human. It's not speaking in words, really. So what is it? Rachel asked. Yerk? I let my mind drift back to the dream. I tried to hear the sound in my head again. No, not Yerk. It reminds me of something. Of someone. The Andalite, Tobias blurted. I snapped my fingers. Yes, that's it. It reminds me of the Andalite. When he first spoke to us. That's what it's like. The Andalite, Marco muttered. He looked away. I knew he was remembering. We all were. We had been walking home from the mall at night, walking through a big abandoned construction site, when the Andalite ship had appeared above us. It landed, and out came the Andalite prince, fatally wounded in a battle with the Yeerks somewhere in space. He was the one who had warned us of the Yeerks, the parasite species that inhabited the brains of other creatures and enslaved them, making them controllers. He was the Andalite who had warned us and who, in desperation, had given us the great and terrible weapon, the power to morph. We had been hiding, cringing in terror, when the Yeerks caught up with the Andalite, when Visser III himself, the Yeerk leader, had murdered him. I shuddered at the terrible memory of the Andalite's last despairing cry. Yes, I whispered. Tobias is right. It's an Andalite. That's who's calling us from the sea, an Andalite. For a few minutes, no one said anything. Then Rachel said, He died trying to save us. She looked defiantly at Marco. I know that doesn't mean anything to you, but the Andalite died trying to save Earth. Marco nodded. I know, and you're wrong, Rachel. That means plenty to me. Yeah? Yeah, well, if there's some Andalite calling for help, I'm going to try and help him, Rachel said. I looked over at Jake, and we shared this look, like, oh, big surprise, Rachel is all ready to go. I hid my smile, and Jake kept a straight face, too. Tobias, Jake asked, what do you say? I don't know if I should have a vote. I'm the one person here who isn't going to be much help dealing with water. Besides, you guys all know how I'd vote. Of all of us, it was Tobias who had stayed longest at the Andalite's side, even as the Andalite ordered him to get away to safety. Something really... Pardon me, Utnapishtim is drinking water so loudly, I may be losing the ability to read. Yes, Uther thinks he is helpful dealing with water. He sure was at 4 o'clock in the morning. Something really deep had passed between the Andalite prince and Tobias. It was my turn. I can't just ignore someone crying out for help, if that's what this is. We all looked at Marco. I could see Rachel getting angry, like she was ready to jump all over Marco if, as usual, he disagreed. Marco just grinned. I really hate to do this. I really hate to disappoint you all. Then he grew serious. But I was there at the construction site, same as all of you. I was there when Visser III... Suddenly his voice choked. What I mean is, if there is an Andalite who needs anything, I'm there. Chapter 5. You do realize that if we're down here at the beach because of that news story, some controllers are probably down here too. Marco asked for about the 10th time. Yes, Marco, Jake said patiently. But maybe Cassie and Tobias can get some feeling from being down here, closer to the sea. So let me get this straight. We're now making decisions based on Tobias and Cassie's dreams, right? And yet my dreams are totally ignored. The fact that I once dreamed about staying home and watching TV in total safety, that means nothing to y'all, right? Right, Jake said flatly. We were at the beach, the same beach where the guy on the news had found what we now believed was a piece of an Andalite ship. It was night. It was night with a sliver of moon that painted ripples of silver across the black water. A salt breeze blew off the water, making me feel peaceful and yet a little overwhelmed, intimidated, the way the ocean always makes me feel. There's nothing as big as the ocean. It's like this entirely different planet, full of strange plants and fantastic animals, valleys and mountains and caves and broad, flat plains, all hidden from our sight. All I could see of it was the surface. All I could feel was the barest edge of the ocean, rushing over my toes as each wave crashed ashore. But I could sense it out there. I could sense how vast it was, and how tiny I was. How about my other dream of living long enough to get a driver's license? Jake gave Marco an exasperated look. Marco, you can turn into a bird and fly. You could do it right now. Why would you care about driving a car a few years from now? The babes, Marco said instantly. Duh. You can't pick up girls when you're a bird. He glanced overhead, where we could see just He glanced overhead, where we could see just the hint of dark wings against the canopy of stars. No offense, Tobias. The wings are great, but I'm thinking of something bright red with about 400 horsepower. Marco's cooperative mood hadn't lasted long. I knew it wouldn't. Marco is never happy unless he's complaining about something. Just like Rachel is never happy unless she has something to fight against. And Tobias is never happy. Period. He thinks if he ever is happy, someone will just come along and take his happiness away. So Cassie, Rachel said, do you feel anything? Well, I feel a little embarrassed, I admitted, and a little foolish. Maybe we could try calling the Psychic Friends, Marco suggested. Hi, is this Psychic Friends? I've been dreaming about aliens lately. Why Cassie and Tobias? Rachel wondered aloud, ignoring Marco. Why would they get these images so clearly, and the rest of us barely felt anything? Jake shook his head. I don't know. I mean, okay, say you're an Andalite, and you want to call for help. Say you're an Andalite, and you want to call for help. Who'd you want to come and rescue you? Other Andalites, obviously. Tobias isn't an Andalite, and neither am I pointed out. I know, Jake said. But maybe this communication, whatever it is, is tied into the ability to morph. You know, like morphing ability makes you able to hear it. That way, only Andalites would be able to receive the call for help. I may have to request Matt take the loud critter away because I quite seriously can't hear myself think or speak. He's so loud. Take him away. Please excuse the interruption. Bye. Let me try that last little bit again. I know, Jake said, but maybe this communication, whatever it is tied into the ability to morph. You know, like morphing ability makes you able to hear it. That way, only Andalites would be able to receive the call for help. Which still doesn't explain why Tobias and I... Maybe it does, Marco interrupted, serious again. Look, Tobias is permanently in morph, and Cassie, you're the one who has the most talent for morphing. Then he flashed white teeth in the dark. Besides, you know you like animals more than humans, so it's like you're halfway into a morph all the time anyway. Suddenly, a dark shape swooped low over our head. Lights, Tobias said. Up ahead on the beach, there's a bunch of people moving in a line with flashlights, like they're searching for something. You can't see them yet because they're hidden by that dune, but they'll be here in a couple of minutes. Who are they? Jake demanded. I can't tell you, Tobias said. My eyes may be great during the day, but at night, I don't see any better than you do. I'm a hawk, not an owl. Fortunately, I still hear pretty well. You guys hide in the dunes. I'll be right back. With that, he was gone again. Come on, Jake said. He's right. Let's hide in the dunes. We crouched down in a pocket between two dunes. I lay flat on my belly in the cold sand and peered through the tall seagrass, focusing on the bright line of the surf. Tobias was back a few minutes later. It's them, he said. He came to rest on a piece of driftwood. It's a group from the Sherry. Chapman is with them. He turned his head to look at Jake. Tom is with them too. The Sharing is a front organization for the Yerks. Supposedly, it's this group for all ages, like Girl Scouts or whatever. In reality, it's a way for the controllers to try and recruit new voluntary hosts. As impossible as it may seem, Some humans actually decide to become hosts for the Yeerks. The Yeerks like it that way. It's easier for them to have a voluntary host instead of a host that resists their control. The sharing is very subtle, of course. People are brought along very slowly, over time. New members have no idea what it's all about at first, and they think it's just fun and games. I don't know when they tell the members what's really happening, but then I guess it's too late. So, by then, I guess it's probably too late. They either become hosts voluntarily, or, like Jake's brother Tom, they're taken anyway. Tom is with them? Jake asked. I'm pretty sure, Tobias said. Some of the senior members, Chapman and Tom, are following behind the others. I could hear some of what they were saying. They're very worried about that fragment of Andalite ship. So it is an Andalite, Rachel asked, excited. I guess so, Tobias said. I heard something else, too. The way he hesitated made me tense up. What? Something about Visser 3 Something about Visser 3 having visions. That's what they said. Visions. I guess the visions made the Visser cranky. Right. Something about Visser 3 having visions. That's what they said. Visions. I guess the visions made the Visser cranky. He was on the mothership at the time and decided to shove a Hork-Bajir out of an airlock because he broke the Visser's concentration. See? It's because of Visser 3's Andalite body, Marco said. That's the connection. These dreams or visions or whatever they are, they must be some kind of communication that's only supposed to be heard by Andalites. Suddenly, I saw the line of flashlights swing into view. There must have been 20 people strung across the beach, all looking down at the sand, moving forward slowly. They're searching for any other fragments, I whispered. A part of the line stopped moving. I heard someone yelling. Others came running up, excited. What did they find? Jake wondered. I don't. Then, in a flash, it came to me. Our footprints. Our footprints. 4 sets of fresh footprints that suddenly turn off into the dunes. Let's get out of here, Jake hissed. Now. Too late. The flashlight beams raced across the rippling sand and up the side of the dune. In an instant, a dozen flashlight beams focused in on the notch where we were crouched. We slithered back, down and out of sight. Then we jumped up again. We should morph, Rachel gasped as we stumbled over the sinking sand. No, Marco said. Tracks. Tracks. We would leave tracks that went from human to animal. Get them! Someone shouted. Chapman, I think. He's our assistant principal at school. I knew his voice from hearing him yell in the hallways. Jerky, wild beams of light danced all around us. We ducked and ran as fast as we could. But running across sand is like running through, well, quicksand. Jake was gasping out whispered instructions. Double around. If they follow us deeper into the dunes, we can double around. Get in the water, then morph. There, I see them. A beam of light swept over me. There, I see them. A beam of light swept over me. I could see my shadow, long and twisted, projected out onto the sand. I dodged left, out of the light, just in time. Bam, bam! Gunfire. Someone was shooting at me. The next chapter is a pretty short one, so I think I will do one last chapter and call it a night. Chapter 6. It seemed totally crazy. I mean, I've been in one-on-one combat to the death with 7-foot-tall Hork-Bajir warriors, And I've been shot at by Dracon beams that sort of disintegrate you slowly, but I'd never been shot at with plain old everyday guns. It seemed nuts after all we'd been through. Bam, bam, bam! Phew! I heard something hit the sand just inches from my foot. Ah! I cried in surprise. This was real. Real. This was really happening. A rough hand grabbed me and dragged me forward. Jake. I had frozen when I'd heard the bullet so close. Hmm. They're all in the dunes, Tobias cried. Now is the time. Come on, Jake snapped. He half dragged me up the side of the nearest dune, but by then I was moving fine all on my own. I was scurrying up the side of that hill, snatching at handholds of scrub grass, pistoning my feet into the sand. Over the top, we slid and rolled and ran down the far side. We were back on the beach. I stole a quick glance to the right. No lights on the beach. They were all in the dunes, looking for us. Head to the water, Jake said. Morph to fish. Jake, I panted. Trout, they're freshwater fish. This is saltwater. You have a better idea? He asked. Bam, bam. No, I said. We splashed into the boiling surf. As I ran, I pictured the fish. I remembered being the fish. I focused as much as anyone can focus with a dozen or so controllers chasing her and shooting. My feet went out from under me because they had shriveled and begun to disappear. I hit the water and got a mouthful of salty foam. I tried to keep my head above water, but my arms were rapidly disappearing. Pardon me. The waves were high around me as I became smaller and smaller. My clothing billowed. The people from the sharing, the controllers, raced to the water's edge. I could see their lights, weirdly distorted as my eyes went from the air-adapted eyes of a human to the eyes of a fish. With what was left of my ears, I heard, "The tracks lead right into the water." Tom's voice, then Chapman's. "I don't see them. They can't swim far. The current is too strong. Fan out, up and down the beach." Do you think these are Andalite gorillas? No, the tracks are human. Just some kids, probably. I doubt they saw anything. That fool should not have been shooting. Sir? A new voice said. We found a pair of jeans in the surf. Looks like they could be for a kid. Any identification in them? No, nothing. Coincidence, Chapman said. Probably. If they're human, why don't we see them out there? Tom asked. If they're human, why don't we see them out there? Tom asked. 4 sets of human tracks. No humans in the water. Is it possible? Is Visser 3 wrong? What if they're not Andalites at all? I sank beneath the water. The morph was almost complete. But as I went under, I heard Chapman laugh cruelly. Visser 3 wrong? Maybe, but I'm not the fool who's going to try and tell him that. The morph was complete. I was a fish, less than a foot long. A trout, to be exact. Excellent broiled, fried, or grilled. The salt water was harsh on my scales, and my gills were barely able to breathe. Everyone okay? It was Jake. Now that we had morphed, we all had the same thought-speech ability as Tobias. I'm okay, I assured him, but I can barely breathe. I think we'd better be quick. I'm with Cassie, Rachel said. I feel like my scales are burning up, and my gills are on fire. Keep the shore on your left and go full speed as long as you can stand it, Jake advised. Marco, are you with us? I asked. Oh, sure. Where else would I be? What could possibly be more fun then running around the sand dunes getting shot at, and then jumping into the ocean and turning into a trout who, incidentally, can't live in salt water. I wouldn't miss it for anything. Now, can I go home and watch TV? All right. And as that is almost exactly an hour, I think I will leave it there for tonight and return with chapter 7 next week. Thank you so much for listening. And good night.